For as long as I can remember, this has been my house. I know every room, I know every inch, I know every quirk and every creaky spot in the hardwood flooring. Sarah and I built this house together. God, she was so beautiful. To me, she was more beautiful each and every day, right up until she got the cancer. Damn disease. It slowly ate away at her perfect figure until she wasn't much more than skin and bones. In the end, even though I was already an old man, I could lift her up like I was lifting up one of my grandbabies. She weighed nothing at all. It wasn't always like that, though. We met in grade school. Despite being one of the biggest kids in school, I was dumb and I was so shy. Painfully shy. Sarah was the opposite. She was the light in any room. She walked right up to me and asked me if we could be friends. I couldn't even say anything, I was so dumbfounded. But that was it. That was all it took. I loved her from that day forward. We grew up together in a way. In high school, she was the prettiest girl in school. Lots of boys were sweet on her, but she only had eyes for me. I never really understood why. I worked up the nerve to ask her one day. She just said that she liked me and that I was different. I still didn't understand why. All I knew was I was glad, and I would do anything for her. We were sweethearts all throughout high school. We made plans to go to college together, but just before graduation, Pearl Harbor happened. I couldn't just sit by and do nothing. After graduation, I enlisted with the Army, and I became a Ranger. I thought about joining the Navy, but I'm a solid 6'5". I didn't think being stuck on a cramped metal tube floating in the middle of the ocean would be very comfortable for myself or any other sailor who had to be with me. Because of Pearl Harbor, I wanted to go to the Pacific, but they sent me to Europe. I was in Normandy on D-Day. I fought in France, Germany, and I was even in North Africa for a time. There were many times that I thought I would never see my beautiful Sarah again, but somehow I lived through it all. When I came home, I promised Sarah that if she would still have me, I would never leave her again. I'm glad to say that I kept that promise. We were together every day after we married, right up until the day that she went home to be with the Lord. After we married, we were so poor I wasn't sure what we were going to do. But being a World War II vet had its perks. My father introduced me to a friend of his, old George Mankins. Mr. Mankins took a liking to me, and he taught me the construction business. Since I was a big, strong son of a gun who didn't mind working hard, I learned quickly and I rose through his ranks. A few years later, Sarah and I had enough money saved up to build a house. This house. Most of the features were picked by her. I could never say no to her. I did a lot of the work myself, and what I didn't do was handled by George's guys, who were all just buddies of mine. It was a great house from the very beginning. I remember how proud my parents were the first time they visited. We filled that house with lots of wonderful memories, and a few sad ones that I try not to think about too much. Sarah lost the first baby in the upstairs bathroom. That one was hard. She had been pregnant for about 3 months. Then one day, something just wasn't quite right. As I was sitting down to have a cup of morning coffee, she gave the most god-awful scream. I flew up the stairs, taking 3 steps at a time. Her long nightgown was soaked through in blood. A year later, we tried for another baby. This time, it was only 2 months before she lost that one. That one wasn't quite as terrifying, but it still hurt all the same. God works in mysterious ways, though, and He brings favor when you least expect it. 3 years later, Sarah got pregnant. By the time she realized it, she was already 2 months along. We spent a lot of nights on our knees praying that this one would be the one. And thankfully, our prayers were answered. A few months later, Sarah gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. He would be our only one. I told her we should try for a girl. I always wanted a little girl. But in the end, Sarah didn't want to try. She said she couldn't handle the heartache of having another miscarriage. How was I supposed to argue with that? We named our son after me, Roman Jr. He had my barrel chest and my height, but he had Sarah's brains and quick wit. We couldn't have asked for more, and he turned out to be a really good boy. He met a good girl and started his own family. They moved across the country for work. Before Sarah died, they used to visit a couple times a year. They would bring the two most beautiful granddaughters you ever saw. I love those little angels. After Sarah died, they continued to visit me twice a year. But as the girls got older, there was only an annual visit. Now I honestly can't remember the last time I saw Junior and his family. Oh, I know I'm not invincible. I know that I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I've had my own health scare. Doc said it was my heart. He wanted me to stop eating so much bacon. Who ever heard of such a thing? Sometimes, back during the war, all we could get was canned bacon and cold coffee. Anyways, when I had my heart issue, Junior actually came out and stayed with me for almost a month. Junior suggested that I sell the house and move into a nursing home near him. That conversation didn't go well. Thankfully, he dropped the subject matter before either of us said anything we'd regret. Despite that conversation, it was nice to spend some time with him, especially after his mother's passing. It couldn't have been easy for him either. One day I was feeling much better. Once I was up and about, Junior left. I guess he's been busy these days because I haven't seen or heard from him much. Lately, the house has been, well, it's been a bit strange. Can't really explain it. At first I thought this old noggin of mine was just going fuzzy. Maybe the issue with my ticker did something to scramble my memories. I would leave things in one place, but later that thing would turn up somewhere else. For example, this morning, I left a coffee cup on the dining table. I got caught up doing something else. When I came back to clean up, the coffee cup and the saucer was already washed and put away in the drying rack. And the other day, I went to the bedroom and I found something odd. My eyes are a bit sensitive to light, thanks to a flamethrower incident back in France. So on sunny days I tend to close the curtains in whatever room I'm in. It used to drive Sarah nuts, but she got used to my quirks. Ever since she died, I just mostly keep all the curtains in the house closed, and my bedroom curtains are closed all the time. Well, that evening when I went into the bedroom, all of the curtains were open. It certainly has been strange. Sometimes I hear footsteps in the hallway and on the stairs. There have been times when I'll be sitting and watching TV, and I'll just hear someone walking up and down the stairs. I go to look, but sure enough, there's no one there. In fact, there is no one in the house except for me. I'm not one to believe in ghosts, and that would just be nonsense. Back during the war, there were times when I was surrounded by dead men, all shot up, blown to bits, and even burnt to a crisp. We'd sit side by side, day and night. One time, while in a foxhole with another guy, that guy took a mortar frag right to the face. There was a great big hole, big enough to push a baseball through. Not one time did I ever hear or feel or see a ghost. Certainly, there had to be a rational explanation for what was going on in my house. Or maybe I was just going crazy. One day I decided to give Junior a call. If nothing else, it would be nice to catch up. "Hello? Who is this?" said the voice on the other end. It sounded like my son, but the connection was terrible. He sounded like he was underwater. "Listen, I don't know who you are, but this isn't funny." Frustrated, I gave up. I decided I should go fry up a bacon sandwich for myself. While in the kitchen, the strangest thing happened. I heard the back door unlock on its own. I knew the sound well, and immediately I turned to see the doorknob turning. I heard the sound of boots step inside. The door closed by itself. The lock turned by itself. Then the footsteps began to walk across the hardwood in the kitchen. Without thinking about it, my jaw dropped, and I whispered, "Sarah?" The footsteps that had been a steady walk turned into a sprint. The quick rise and fall of boots went from the kitchen to the living room. I tried to follow, but just as quickly as it happened, it all just vanished somewhere in the living room. I stopped. I looked around, and it was all quiet. The activity only got worse after that day. The footsteps were non-stop. Sometimes I heard muffled voices. It sounded like a woman's voice, but it was just gibberish. No matter how hard I strained these old ears, I couldn't make out the words. Doors were opening and closing by themselves. Lights would turn on and off. Nighttime was actually the only time that I was at ease. The activity seemed to dissipate late at night, except for one particular night, and something really scary happened. Suddenly, I felt like someone else was in bed with me. It had been some time since Sarah died, but the old habit of sleeping on my side of the bed remained. Even when I tossed and I turned, I stayed on my side. Sarah used to get cold easily. In the night, sometimes she would touch my back with her hand. It was a sign that she needed me. I turned over and I would hold her to warm her up. But now she was gone. Yet, as I laid there, I felt as if someone was laying behind me. Suddenly I felt a hand brush the curve of my spine. Every hair on my neck and my arms stood up on it. "What the hell is that?" I whispered to myself. I took a silent but deep breath, and with all the courage that I had, I turned over. Right there, facing me and sleeping on her side, was a woman. She looked like any other woman, except she had no face. There were no eyes, there was no nose, and there was no mouth. Where her face should have been, it was just a strange fuzziness. It looked like a kid drew a picture of a woman. He drew her face and then he erased it with an eraser until the paper started to fray. I was frozen with terror. I closed my eyes and I whispered a foxhole prayer. Less than 5 seconds later, I opened my eyes again, and the woman was gone. As you can imagine, I was unable to fall asleep again that night. I went downstairs and I sat by the phone in silence. I needed to talk to Junior about this. I'm not even sure what he could do to help, but I needed to tell someone. Hopefully, the phone is working better now. The number you have dialed has been changed to an unregistered number. What the hell? Did my only son just change his phone number and not tell me? For the rest of the day, I sat on that sofa. The more I thought about it, I was actually more hurt than angry. Well, actually, I did become angry. He was my only kid. His mother had died, and I'm old now. He should be going out of his way to check on me. Why the hell do I have to call him? And why would he change his phone number and not tell me? I really didn't know what to do. I just sat there, and I stewed. When evening came, the activity returned. The lock to the front door suddenly turned. I could hear keys jingle. I sat in the dark, and I could see the glint of the brass doorknob turn. The door opened up slow, then footsteps entered. The quiet fear that was in my heart suddenly gave way. Now I was just angry. I was angry about everything. "Who are you?" I screamed as loud as I could. "Get out of here. This is my house, and you are in my house." With that, I grabbed the water glass in front of me and threw it as hard as I could at the front door. The little bit of water in the glass spiraled out as the glass flew end over end and shattered against the door. Shards of glass flew everywhere. Then I heard a woman scream very loudly. This time her words were not muffled. She came through as clear as a bell. "Stop it!" screamed the woman. "This is my house. You might not know it, but you died. And you need to move on, Roman."